What do you do with an empty Coke can? You turn it into Beskar steel, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, and all variations thereupon, this is the way. Now the first step in creating a Beskar ingot is to get some metal. I've got here a Coke can because it's about the right size for my phone. If your phone's a little wider or longer than mine, then you might want a bigger can. But what we're going to do is cut in, and because it's only just about the right size, I'm going to cut as close as I can to these bends in the metal here. To do that, I'm just going to press my knife in and try as best I can to follow that crease in the metal. Now, the thing we need to consider when we're measuring this up for the correct size is how much protection do we want to afford our phone, because a thin sheet of aluminium like this will protect from scratches and such like, but it won't protect very much from impacts. So if we're going to set something up that's going to protect against being knocked about a bit, then we're going to want to keep on some other form of cover, and I have here the clear plastic cover that it came with when I bought it. And because I'm going to have this over my phone because I want to give it that little bit extra protection, I'm going to cut it so that the metal only comes up to the sides of this. If I was going to use the aluminium completely itself, then I'd have to make sure that there was enough metal left over that I could create a slight lip around the edge there. We don't want too much because we don't want to block off any of the functional parts like the speaker at the top, or prevent from being able to touch at the edge of the touchscreen. So we'd only want a very small lip. As it is, because I'm using this plastic case to give it that extra bit of protection, I'm not going to worry about creating the lip, because this plastic case already has a very small lip there. So I'm just going to cut it large enough so that it will stick to the sides. Now the first step in preparing this aluminium is going to be to remove the ink from the one side. Now there is a way to do this with a pressure cooker and some nail polish remover, but that doesn't work in all cases and you've got to test it beforehand. Pressure cookers can be both expensive and dangerous. So instead I'm just going to use wire wool and a little bit of elbow grease. It's going to take a while, but basically, see it's already coming off there. Just going to scratch off The next step is to flatten out the alumite. I like to do this by folding it up into some scrap cotton and heating it with the iron at the hottest setting, giving constant hot pressure. Make sure, by the way, you're not using a plastic material like polyester, because it just melts onto your iron. And then once you're done, be careful because this is going to be very hot. Okay, so this is cooled down. There's still a slight bend to it, but it's mostly flat. And you've got to decide which side we want to have facing outwards and which side we want facing the phone. And this is the side that had the print design on it. So because I've used dark Coke can, some of the silver paint is probably still on there and my eyes aren't good enough to see it. So this is always going to look slightly scratched and scuffed and things. But this side was the inside of the can and this is a lot cleaner. So I think I'm going to use this as the outside, and the bonus is that because that was the inside of the can, it bent up that way. So if I use that as the outside of the phone case, so if I put the phone case there, then it's going to oppose that bend and sit more flush with the actual phone. I'll just bend that up a little bit. But so that's the way around we're going to do it. And what we need to do now is, if you look, the phone's going to have several things like the camera, the speaker system, the thumbprint detector that needs to be cut out. So the way we're going to mark where we need that is, firstly, I'm going to paste the phone case on it, make sure we've got enough metal on either side, but I could bend it up. And once I'm happy with the position, I'm going to grab a little bit of tape and tape over a couple of these areas. And what we really want is 3 good points of contact, just so we can make sure it doesn't slide around too much. Then I'm going to take one of these. Now this is a stylus that I use for marking leather. But if you don't have one of these, you can use a ballpoint pen or something like that. Something that's fairly hard and fairly narrow to a point. And then I'm just going to score on where these sections are that are going to need to be removed. And taking that off, you can see the marks that have been left in there. So what we've got to do now is cut out these sections. So be careful of the corners as you're going. You might want to place something soft over the corners while you're cutting them out. I'm just going to cut out these sections. And as always, it's better to do multiple light passes than it is to do one big hard cut, because you're going to be more accurate. Right, now that's cut to size, before I seal it up and make it permanently stand up, I'm going to put a piece of kitchen roll, but something soft, underneath one of the corners, specifically this bottom corner here, and try and hold it down. And then I'm going to take something that's round and about the right size, and I'm going to mark on the imperial symbol. Probably could have been done even before bending up the sides, because it would have made it easier. And it's the area outside of the hexagon but inside of the circle that's pressed in, according to my reference image. And the hidden symbolism to this is, of course, that at the centre of the empire is actually a butthole. And then we're going to fill in the very centre point. So now that the glue's dry, it's still rough around the edges and the corners will have to be sanded down, but largely that's in a firm shape. But it's very flexible because it's only thin aluminium. So I'm going to put it over the foam case I've already got, which will make it a lot more rigid. Now if you don't have a foam case, if you're going to make it purely out of metal, then we're going to take a engraving tool and just cut on. First I'm going to do the imperial symbol around here, just engraving around there, and then we're going to do the Beskar stripes. because the area of etching is rougher than the rest of the metal, if we paint on the darker colours and then wipe off the excess paint, we'll end up with darker areas where we've etched. And so there we have it. There's a few things I would change if I were to do it again. The reason I made it up into a 3D shape before I did the etching on the surface was because on Beskar the lines wrap around it and go over the sides and around the corners. It's like it flows in layers. So I wanted to make sure that when I was doing the corners, especially because pieces got to be cut out, that when I was etching over, I was going to have a proper continuation of the line. As it turns out, because the corners are at the corners, the lines don't have to flow over them, so it was unnecessary. The other thing is around the sides of the cuts. Some of the paint is stuck there, so I'd probably be a bit more careful when you're painting it, because where you've cut out the holes for the camera and such like, there's going to be a little bit of a bend in the metal, and that's something that can catch the paint. It still needs a little bit of cleaning up, and the corners probably need a little bit of a file. One thing to be careful of is that when I was gluing it onto the actual case, it slid down a little. I hadn't measured up the size of it perfectly, and it was slightly smaller and it slid down. So the top it has a little bit of a gap and the bottom is slightly covered. Now this, it doesn't really matter, that I can still touch the thumbprint thing and it still works, and the camera is at the top, so it's not obscuring the camera anyway, the fact that it's slid down. So there really wasn't a big problem, it's just a slight thing that I'm going to notice. And the Empire symbol didn't turn out quite as well as I'd hoped, but actually that was my first time trying to engrave something. So I think for a first attempt at engraving, I didn't do that bad a job really. So that's going to be my new phone from now on, a Mandalorian Beskar steel ingot. And if any of you try this at home, be sure to let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.